morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live inside the Beltway, joined by former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Good morning, Governor. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh.
It's Victory Tuesday. The Browns won a Monday night game. That doesn't happen very often, Governor. I was wondering, did you watch the Browns last night?
I did watch the Browns last night. They were dominant.
They were dominant. It's not like the 3-5 record would show. It's almost as though they were as good as the Jets. Governor, I always ask you two things when we start an interview before we get to the election in front of us. First thing, Lindor and Carrasco for Jimenez and Rosario. I still like the deal from the Guardian's perspective. What do you think?
And I'd like the deal from the Mets' perspective. Sometimes you can do deals that benefit both teams, and I think this one did.
It's a rare area of sports agreement with the former governor. Secondly, what is the latest you can wait to declare a presidential campaign in 2024? When do you have to decide publicly by?
I don't think until, I don't think you'll wait until mid-year of 23 rather.
Wait, I think you got to go in January, don't you think?
Oh, I don't think so, Hugh. I think everybody is different. Everyone's going to have to make the determination different based upon your own public profile and how the race shapes up. So it depends on when other people announce and your own public profile on that. Because, what I learned in 15 and 16 was a lot of that early motion is not progress. And so, a lot of it depends on when will debates start and all the rest of that. So, I don't think there's any rush, Hugh.
Bingo. When do the debates start? Now, I've been urging Chairwoman McDaniel, who's done a great job, to get forums at least started among even unofficially people like you and Mike Pompeo, and get Nikki Haley and talk about national security. And that, Fox will carry it, someone will carry that. That's actually good TV as opposed to what we see every night.
No, look, I absolutely agree. And I think we have to be having this discussion as Republicans, laying out for folks what's been going wrong in this country, the problems with the way the Biden administration has approached all these different issues, from foreign policy to the economy to energy policy. And I think when those discussions start, that's when Republicans really have to be engaged.
Okay, the sooner that we get Republican potential candidates out on the stump, the better from my perspective. Okay, Governor, let's go to blue bubble problems. I got to play for you. Now, I have enormous respect for Margaret Brennan and Jake Tapper and Chuck Todd and George Stephanopoulos. They try and do a good job, but they're all in the blue bubble. And Chris Sununu just had it with Chuck Todd this weekend, cut number 10.
Each of the Democratic campaign committee heads that have done these ads supporting election denialists, I have put on this show, I have put them under this questioning. So I go back to you. Why are you supporting an election denialist? And do you think the inflation issue is enough to sort of rationalize support for somebody who thinks school buses of voters are going to show up in New Hampshire?
Yeah, let me tell you, you're in a bubble, man. I love you, Chuck, but you are in a bubble if you think anybody is talking about what happened in 2020 or talking about Mar-a-Lago and all that. I know the press loves to talk
about it. Stop right there. Governor Christie, it's a knockdown by Chris Sununu. You don't want to get in front of Chris Sununu when you're detached from political reality. But I actually think this is a widespread problem. You've been on the road. I've been on the road. Nobody talks about 2020. They talk about inflation, crime, and the border.
That's exactly right. And the other issue you hear them talking about is parental involvement in their kids' education. And you don't hear that. You don't hear about 2020. And I have been on the road, Hugh, all over this country, and you very rarely hear about the abortion issue as well, which is the other thing that the media is obsessed with.
Now, when that comes up, what Chris Sununu said is, I love you, Chuck, but nobody's talking about. On the Washington Post broadcast on Friday, I said to Ruth Marcus and Jonathan Capehart, look, guys, you may want to talk about threat to democracy. Nobody believes that outside of the left wing of the Democratic Party. Do you run into Republicans who are worried about the, quote, threat to democracy, Chris Christie?
No, I don't. And what I say to people all the time who bring that up is that I absolutely believe that January 6th, while it was an awful event, I think it proved the strength of our democracy. Because by 4 a.m. the next morning, members of the House and Senate were back on the floors of their bodies certifying the election, despite the violence, despite the things that happened. So to me, what January 6th ultimately proved was not that it was a threat to democracy, but it proved the resilience of our democracy.
When I see you on This Week, though, it's the same clip every week. They say crazy stuff about what the election's about, and you say, no, that's not what the election is. The election's about 13% year over year in food inflation. And Governor, I just don't think maybe the media makes too much money to actually feel impacted by this. Is that the problem?
No, I think they're in the tank for the Democrats, Hugh, and they don't. So when you're in the tank, you've got to be able to talk. You don't want to talk about inflation. You don't want to talk about crime. You want to talk about abortion. You want to talk about threat to democracy and election deniers. And I think part of the job of one of the reasons why I do what I do on ABC is for the folks who watch there is to bring them back to reality of what's really going on in the country. I was in Oregon last week, Hugh, with Christine Drazan, who's the gubernatorial candidate, and Lori Chavez-DeRemer, a great House candidate in Oregon 5. When I was campaigning with those women in Oregon, what you were hearing about was crime, homelessness, and inflation. And that's all you were hearing about from voters. And that's the Oregon voters, Hugh, which are not, as you know, the most conservative in America.
So I like to tell people there are two kinds of Republicans who appear in legacy media outlets, refugees and missionaries. Chris Christie and I are missionaries. We try and go out and bring people back. But the refugees are out there chiming in on threat to democracy. Let me turn to the New York Times Siena poll. Yesterday, the New York Times said that John Fetterman is 6 points ahead of Dr. Oz and that Mark Kelly is 6 points ahead of Blake Masters. Both of those are ludicrous, Chris Christie. Why do they publish that?
Again, because they are advocates for a point of view, not reporters of news. And that's exactly what they're doing, and they're trying to stem the tide. Now, none of us know exactly what's going to happen a week from tonight. And if we did, we would all be making a lot of money on betting sites here and over in London. But the fact is that they do that stuff, and we've seen it, Hugh. It's to advocate for a particular position instead of a set of candidates. And what they're doing is to try to discourage Republican turnout. And Republicans just can't worry about those things. And independents who are concerned about this country, and quite frankly, Democrats who are concerned about the direction of this country, have to just listen to the debates, listen to the discussion, and make sure they're out there voting.
Now, Governor, you are, along with Mike Pompeo, co-chair of the Republican Redistricting Trust. I think the job you did is superb. I think we have a fair map. I mean, there's some gerrymandering in Illinois and Massachusetts, and there's some gerrymandering in states that Republicans control, like Florida, but you work the margins pretty well here. And that's what this is. This is about small ball when it comes to redistricting. It's not about home runs. It's about small ball.
Those questions. Look, what you're going to see on election night from the work that Mike and I did, where it's going to show up most starkly, is in New York, where people thought we were going to get gerrymandered down to 4 seats. I bet you we will gain 4 seats on election night in New York, which never would have happened if we hadn't challenged that awful map that Sean Patrick Maloney, Chuck Schumer, and the whole gang tried to give us in New York. And I'm going to make this prediction. Sean Patrick Maloney is going to lose. The head of the DCCC is going to lose his seat to a great young candidate named Mike Longer, who I was campaigning with just a week ago in the Hudson Valley in New York. And I think you're going to also see a guy named Mark Molinaro in the Hudson Valley in New York add a seat as well. And Lee Zeldin may very well win the governorship in New York.
Yeah, these are all true statements. And I was briefed by a Republican that Sean Patrick, what's his last name, Maloney?
Yeah.
He's spending the DCCC money on himself, which is not why people give money to the DCCC.
No, in fact, what he did was, it's even worse, Hugh. He took money away from races that he had pledged it to spend it on himself. Another $600,000 just this past week. That's when you know the head of the DCCC is going down the tubes. Let me tell you, when Rahm Emanuel was the head of the DCCC, he wasn't spending money on his seat in Chicago. And that's the kind of desperation that Maloney is in. And Democrats all over the map are in this kind of trouble. How about this? We are going to win for the first time in 40 years, I will predict to you, a House seat in Rhode Island. Yep. Alan Fung in the 2nd District of Rhode Island is going to win that House seat in Rhode Island. Those are the things that are going on across the country.
Governor Chris Christie, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on a great effort. And I'll be watching you on ABC to see if you can grit your teeth and get through again the alternative reality that is reality that doesn't often invade the networks at this time of year.
We'll be doing
Glory
it.
out.
Don't you worry.
Okay, go Browns. Didn't let him get any Jets talk. That's important.